Hi, Maite. So I wanted to ask you because a lot of Estonians have like very intense sibling relationships, and some of them has talked about how they, have like are in a situation where they have to live with their siblings, or maybe they don't live with their siblings anymore. So I wanted to ask you like how it's been like and how you have processed the point of now living together with your sister and how that has assisted you.
Okay. Well, for me, when I was a child, my relationship with my siblings was also very intense. I'm the middle child, so I have an older brother, Gabriel, and a younger sister, Leila. And I remember I used to share a room with Gabriel, and at some point I don't know, I suppose irritate him or annoy him to such an extent that he would start screaming and say, "I just want to throw you out the window now." And I was sitting there thinking, no ways, you don't want to throw me out the window. You like me. You're your sister, you know? It's like I had this innocent point of, what are you talking about? Everything's fine. And then my little sister was born. And it was just conflict. I mean, I suddenly understood what Gabriel was talking about. Because it's like you have your spot in the family structure and a certain amount of attention you get. And generally, the youngest of the siblings gets a lot of attention because it's the cutest one. And so when Layla was born, she suddenly got that position, and I was just furious. It was like I didn't exist. I literally felt like I didn't exist anymore. Like even in family photos, you can see where my sister was a baby, and my uncles and my grandparents were holding her to take a picture, and I would like stand right in the frame, just like on the side, to also be in the picture, to be like, I still exist. I mean, you used to always take pictures of me. Just take pictures of me. I'm still here. So when it was just me and Gabriel, I didn't have that concept of sibling rivalry or anything like that. It was only when my younger sister was born that point started setting in, and then there was a lot of conflict.
So basically, you have both the sibling points. You're both the younger and the older, so you have like the double conflict.
Yes. But so yeah, I wasn't aware of the point at all until I myself was the older sibling. But yeah, I mean, me and my sister, we then shared a room together, and we were talking the whole time about putting a wall in between us, because we hate each other and we want to kill each other, and she's on my side of the room, and it was just like a lot of conflict. But at the same time, we were also kind of best friends, like your love-hate relationship, because we would spend all our time together. And I thought at least that I knew my sister very well, and she probably thought that she knew me very well. But you notice that even with your siblings, you'll never really share yourself entirely. It was only when we started walking our process, because all three of us started walking at the same time. It's actually Leila who introduced me to Desteni. And each one was then starting to blog and write ourselves to freedom, and we like sharing our innermost thoughts and secrets and working through them. And then I realized, wait a minute, I didn't know all these things about my sister. I thought I knew her. I thought, that she was my friend. So why don't I know all these things about her? And the same with me, like all kinds of things that I never would share suddenly came to the surface, and kind of destroys the whole image you have about who your sister is or who your brother is. And then you realize you never really had a relationship with who they are. You only ever had a relationship with your idea of them, like who you want them to be or what you want them to be. For instance, with my older brother, to me, I wanted him to be my parent. He needed to be the example in my life, to set the example and to tell me what's right and what's wrong. And overall just a support and a stability. That's what I wanted him to be, and I thought that was who he was. And with my sister, she had to be the fun and playful little girl so that I can play her mother, So once we started actually getting to know ourselves, firstly, because I myself didn't know who I was. It's only when I started writing about myself and actually just being honest with myself that I started seeing, okay, well, I'm not all those ideas I have about me. I'm not all the things I say about me. I'm not the opinions I have. I'm not the dreams I have. who I really am is here right on this piece of paper, is everything I've ever thought, everything I've ever felt, everything I've ever believed. I mean, that's all that I am. And it shows you, it's a hard thing to face, but you know, then you move from your writing to your forgiveness, and then you see, okay, so where do I go from here? And then you start reconstituting yourself. But basically, when we all started walking that process and started just removing the deception of who we are and starting to, you know, get to some reality, it's only then that I was able to really form relationships with my siblings, because I never knew who they were. And it was actually the first time when I visited the farm with my sister that we realized that we are almost the same, like clones, like the same. I mean, I had a point I was facing, and at the same time she was facing that point, and then I was talking to her like, yeah, I'm working with this point, which is something I would also never do before. I mean, we never talked about how we felt. We were just like projecting our shit onto each other and fighting about it and trying to see who wins, and all the normal sibling stuff. So that was already a big thing, to actually communicate with each other. Like, this is something I'm working through, you know, what's your perspective? How are you working through it? And so I'm sharing with her, I'm working through this point, and she's like, really? I'm working through that point. Oh, okay, what have you realized so far? I realized that, oh yeah, me too. Okay, wow, we can actually like cross-reference with each other? Huh, that's fascinating. Okay, well, that point is still not clear. And we asked for perspective from people, and then we're like, okay. And then we'd go into each other to cross-reference if we both understood the same point in the same way. We're like, yeah, okay, cool. Wow, this is weird. Wow, it's like I can do this with my sister. Wow. But at that point I realized that my sister was not my sister anymore. It's just not a being. And obviously because we share DNA and we've grown up in the same environment, we're like almost the same. We joke about it a lot now, because we're like also studying the exact same things. We live in the same house. Like our lives are very much, synchronized. And it's so easy, because it's literally like you have another you walking out there, and you can constantly cross-reference yourself. You're walking with the other you, which is like awesome. I mean, the whole thing also, what's preoccupies everyone so much is to try and be different and to differentiate themselves from other people and to have their own personality and their own individuality. But I mean, it totally stands in the way from seeing what a gift there is in just realizing that we are all the same. Because if you realize that point, then every single person you ever meet is a person that you can use as a cross-reference for yourself, is someone you can communicate with, is someone you can share yourself with, is someone you can ask assistance from, someone you can learn from. So it changes the whole dynamic from being sisters and, you know, the whole rivalry and competition point and being the older and being the youngest, to being equals.
So for the Destonians who are out there and who have this like very intense sibling relationships, but where the sibling isn't also in the process, do you have any suggestions for how they can approach that relationship, do what you have done, but in themselves, because their sibling isn't walking the same process?
Sure. Well, because I don't have siblings who are not walking process, but I have parents who are not walking process. And, sorry, I had a very terrible relationship with my father my whole life through. And at the moment, last time my father visited me here on the farm, I had the most awesome conversations with him, like very long conversations. I probably spoke more to him here on the farm this last visit when he was here for maybe 2 weeks than I did my whole lifetime. And he's not walking his process, but he did change towards me. And so if you have siblings who are not walking their process, but you see that there's a problem in being stuck in these past relationships of always repeating the same patterns and never really getting anywhere, you have to start with yourself. You have to start with, what I suggest you do is make a list of everything you believe your sibling to be. Everything in terms of the relationship of what you... like for instance, let me give an example with my father. My relationship with my father was mostly one of blame. In terms of how I saw my father, I blamed him for everything that was wrong in my life. So I wrote down on a piece of paper, and you did this to me, and you did this to me, and you did this to me, and you did this to me. And then I realized, well, you know, I cannot move on unless I just remove all this blame. So in my mind, I forgive my father for doing that. I forgive my father for doing that. I forgive my father for doing that. And then I looked at all those points and I realized, but all those points are things that I, in some way, have also done. Not necessarily towards my father or towards myself, but to other people. It's things that I accept and allow in myself too. So look at the relationship in terms of your siblings and identify all the problems, then bring it back to yourself. Work through the problems yourself so that you can start realizing it's not about the other person. The other person is just showing you your own issues. For instance, your brothers and your sisters, they have, they know you. They know what you react to because they've been living with you their whole life. So they have specified very well what buttons to push to get you to be angry. Like my sister's super good at that. So they use that point. I know they're not doing it from a perspective of trying to assist and support you, but you can turn it into a point of self-support. Because every time they push your button, you look at, okay, well, there is a button in me, that's the problem. So you look at why is there a button that they can push. You solve your own inner issues in relation to it. And from there you'll start seeing that your siblings are not the issue. And almost automatically, well, that's how it happened with me, like almost naturally, I started changing my relationship with my father. For instance, one of the points that I was angry with him for is that he never asked me how my day was. Simple, stupid thing. My father should ask me how my day was. How did I do at school? Things like that. And I realized, oh fuck, I never asked him how his day was. I never did that. I never asked him questions about anything. I never asked him what's wrong. I never asked him what's bothering him. Never. So how can I expect that from him if I'm not willing to do it? So it's something I just started doing, like, well, he came home from work, let me ask him how he's doing. And I asked him, how was your day at work? Did it go well? And he had this complete look of surprise on his face because that's just something that was not part of our relationship at all. We did not ask each other questions. I mean, it came to a point that was so bad that we wouldn't speak except for just saying, food's ready, or you need to come help me with this problem on the computer, something like that. Minimal, like 2 sentences a day, something like that. So to me, to just make the first move of saying, how was your day? Something I never considered doing, but like, well, what's the problem with that? And his face was like, yeah, good day, yeah, okay. So he noticed that there was something different there. But if you change, your relationship always consists of 2 parts. You've got you and you've got the other person, and you both maintain that relationship. So if you suddenly change, then that relationship loses half its stability because you're not maintaining it anymore. You're not doing this. Say that it was like this and now you're doing this. That the whole relationship changes. You're not getting the same feedback the whole time. So if you change, maybe the other person changes, maybe the other person doesn't change, but it's all you can do. You cannot force another person to change. But so with my father, what I noticed is he did change. I mean, he responded to my change and also dropping his defenses and his whole attitude towards me, because I changed my attitude towards him. That's all I did. Because I just realized that my whole attitude towards him had nothing to do with him. It had all to do with myself. So, yeah, that's how I suggest you approach it. Just start with yourself. Change your own patterns and how you interact with them. Don't see them as your sister. Don't see them as your brother. Don't see them as your father. Don't see them as your mother. That's not who they are. Who they are is someone completely different. Who they are is a being with their own past, with their own experiences. So just treat them like any other being. And then from there, see what happens.
Cool.
Okay.
That was cool.